The blood on her dress had dried to a rust-brown stain by the time Nora Zimmerman stumbled into Knights Ferry, California. Her feet blistered, and her throat burning from 3 days without water. She had learned long ago that no one would protect her, that cherishing was a word for other women, women whose fathers did not drink away their wages, and whose husbands did not raise their fists when supper arrived cold. The September sun of 1872 beat down mercilessly. As she collapsed against the wooden post outside the general store, her vision swimming with exhaustion and hunger. She did not see the mountain of a man who turned at the sound of her fall, his shoulders broad enough to block out the sun itself. Harrison Masters had come down from his claim in the Sierra Nevada foothills for supplies, his long dark hair tied back with a leather cord, his arms thick with muscle earned from swinging a pickaxe and hauling timber. He crossed the dusty street in 3 long strides, his weathered hands surprisingly gentle as he caught Nora before she crumpled entirely to the ground. "Easy now," his voice rumbled, deep as distant thunder. "I have got you." Those words, simple as they were, penetrated the fog of Nora's consciousness. No one had ever had her before. She tried to focus on the face above hers, taking in a strong jaw darkened with several days of stubble, eyes the color of storm clouds, and a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He smelled of pine and wood smoke and something clean like mountain air. "Please," she managed to whisper. "He will find me." Harrison's expression hardened, his jaw setting in a way that spoke of determination. "Who will find you?" But Nora's eyes had already rolled back, her body giving in to the exhaustion that had driven her for 70 miles on foot. Harrison lifted her as though she weighed nothing more than a child, cradling her against his chest as he carried her toward the small boarding house run by Mrs. Chen, a Chinese widow who asked fewer questions than most. Mrs. Chen took one look at the unconscious woman and the blood on her dress and nodded. "Upstairs, 2nd room, I will bring water and food." Harrison laid Nora on the narrow bed, noting the bruises that mottled her arms, the split in her lip that had scabbed over. The way her body seemed to curl inward even in unconsciousness, as though protecting itself from blows. Something hot and protective surged through his chest, an unfamiliar feeling for a man who had spent the last 5 years alone in the mountains after his family had been taken by fever. He should have left. He had supplies to gather and a long trek back to his claim. The gold would not pan itself, and winter came early in the high country. Yet when Mrs. Chen returned with a basin of water and clean cloths, Harrison found himself pulling up a chair beside the bed. "You stay?" Mrs. Chen asked, one eyebrow raised. "For a while," Harrison said, surprised by his own answer. Mrs. Chen smiled knowingly and left them alone. Harrison wrung out a cloth and carefully cleaned the dirt from Nora's face, revealing delicate features beneath the grime. She was young, probably no more than 22 or 23, with dark blonde hair that might have been pretty if it were not matted with dust and sweat. Her hands bore calluses that spoke of hard work, and her dress, though blood-stained and torn, had been mended multiple times with careful stitches. She woke with a start as the cool cloth touched her cheek, her green eyes flying open in panic. Her hand shot out, catching Harrison's wrist with surprising strength. "No, please, I am sorry, I will do better, I promise." The words tumbled out in a rush, terror making her voice high and thin. "You are safe," Harrison said firmly, not moving despite her grip on his wrist. "I am not going to hurt you. You collapsed outside the general store. You are at Mrs. Chen's boarding house." Nora's eyes darted around the small room, taking in the simple furniture, the clean linens, the man sitting beside her bed. She released his wrist and scrambled backward against the headboard, wrapping her arms around herself. "I do not have money for a room," she said. "Already paid for," Harrison replied, settling back in his chair to give her space. "You looked like you needed help. Why?" The question came out sharp, suspicious. "What do you want?" Harrison considered her carefully. "Nothing. I want nothing from you. You said someone was looking for you. Is that true?" Nora's face went pale. "My husband, Thomas Zimmerman. He will be angry that I left." "Did he do that to you?" Harrison gestured toward the bruises. She did not answer, which was answer enough. Harrison felt his hands curl into fists on his thighs, the urge to hit something nearly overwhelming. He had never struck a woman in his life, could not fathom the kind of man who would. "I have to keep moving," Nora said, already trying to swing her legs out of bed. "If he catches me, he will kill me this time. He promised he would if I ever tried to leave again." "Again?" Harrison stood, moving to block her path without getting too close. "You have tried to leave before." "Twice. He found me both times, beat me so bad the second time I could not walk for a week." She lifted her chin, defiant despite the tremor in her voice. "But I healed and I tried again. I will keep trying until I am far enough away that he cannot find me, or until I am dead." Harrison made a decision in that moment, one that would change both their lives forever. "Then you come with me, up to my claim in the mountains. He will not find you there." Nora stared at him as though he had spoken a foreign language. "Why would you help me? You do not even know me." "Because it is the right thing to do," Harrison said simply. "And because no man should lay hands on a woman the way yours has laid hands on you. You could be worse than him," Nora said, but there was hope creeping into her voice despite her words. "I could be," Harrison agreed, "but I am not. I will not touch you except to keep you safe. You have my word, and a mountain man's word is his bond." Nora studied him for a long moment, this huge man with gentle hands and steady eyes. Every instinct she had developed over 3 years of marriage screamed that trusting a man was foolish, that they all turned cruel eventually. But something in Harrison's face, in the way he had moved away to give her space, in the calm certainty of his voice, made her want to believe. "When do we leave?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning, early. Today you rest and eat. Mrs. Chen will bring you food. I will get the supplies we need." Harrison moved toward the door, then paused. "Lock this behind me. Do not open it for anyone but Mrs. Chen or me. If your husband comes to Knights Ferry, I do not want him finding you." "How will I know it is you?" Nora asked. "I will knock 3 times, pause, then twice more." He demonstrated on the door frame. "Can you remember that?" She nodded, and for the first time since he had found her, a ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Thank you. I do not know why you are doing this, but thank you." Harrison wanted to tell her that something had shifted in his chest the moment he saw her fall, that holding her unconscious form had awakened protective instincts he had thought buried with his family. Instead, he simply nodded and left, waiting to hear the lock slide into place before heading back down to the street. He spent the rest of the afternoon gathering supplies with more care than he usually took. Extra blankets, because the mountain nights were cold. A warm coat that would fit Nora's slender frame. Sturdy boots to replace her worn-through shoes. Food that would last the journey and beyond. He added a rifle to his purchases, along with ammunition. If Thomas Zimmerman came looking, Harrison would be ready. At the general store, he encountered Sheriff Porter, a lean man in his 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "That is a lot of supplies, Harrison," the sheriff commented. "Planning to hole up for the winter?" "Something like that," Harrison replied evenly. "Heard there was some trouble earlier. Woman collapsed outside. Mrs. Chen took her in." Porter's tone was casual, but his gaze was intent. "You know anything about that?" Harrison met his eyes steadily. I helped her to Mrs. Chen's. She looked like she needed assistance. Decent of you." Porter stroked his mustache thoughtfully. "Thing is, got a telegraph earlier. Man named Thomas Zimmerman from down Sacramento way is looking for his wife. Says she ran off, might be headed this direction. Says she is not right in the head, needs to be brought home for her own safety." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Is that so?" "That is what the telegraph said. Course, sometimes men lie. Sometimes women have good reasons for running." Porter leaned against the counter. "You understand what I am saying, Harrison?" "I understand. Good. Because if I were to see a woman matching that description, and she did not want to be found, well, I might be inclined to believe Thomas Zimmerman's wife went in a different direction entirely. Maybe towards San Francisco. Lots of places to hide in a big city." Harrison allowed himself a small smile. "Appreciate you sharing that, Sheriff. Just thinking out loud." Porter tipped his hat. "You take care up in those mountains. Winter comes early this year, I am thinking. Might be you will not make it back down until spring. Might be you are right." Harrison finished his purchases and returned to the boarding house as the sun began to set. He knocked the pattern he had shown Nora and heard the lock slide back almost immediately. She looked better after a few hours of rest, her face clean and her hair brushed, though she still wore the stained dress. "Mrs. Chen brought me food," Nora said, stepping back to let him enter, "and water to wash. She also brought this." She held up a simple brown dress, patched but clean. "She said I could have it, said she understood about needing to start fresh." "She is a good woman," Harrison agreed. He set down the bundle he carried. "Brought you some things for the journey. Boots, a coat, some warmer clothes. We will leave before dawn, so I need you to be ready." Nora's eyes widened as she unwrapped the bundle, her fingers trembling as she touched the sturdy leather boots. "I cannot pay you for these. Did not ask you to. But why? Why are you spending money on me? Why are you helping me?" Her voice cracked. "Men do not do things for nothing. They always want something." Harrison crouched down so they were at eye level, careful to maintain distance. "My mother and 2 sisters died of fever 5 years ago. My father went a year later, just gave up living without my mother. Before he died, he made me promise something. He said that if I ever had the chance to help someone who could not help themselves, I should do it. Said it was the only way to make sense of a world that could take good people too soon." He paused, his voice rough with old grief. "I have not kept that promise as well as I should have. Been too focused on my claim on being alone. But when I saw you fall today, I heard his voice clear as day. So that is why I am helping you. I am keeping a promise to a dead man and maybe trying to be the kind of person my family would have been proud of." Tears spilled down Nora's cheeks. She scrubbed them away angrily. "I am not used to kindness. You should be. Every person deserves kindness." Harrison stood, giving her space again. "I will be in the next room. If you need anything, anything at all, you knock on that wall, I will hear you." "Harrison." She spoke his name for the first time, and he liked the sound of it in her voice. "Thank you. For everything." He nodded and left, lying down on the narrow bed in the adjacent room but not sleeping. He listened to the sounds of the boarding house settling for the night, alert for any sign of trouble. Somewhere past midnight, he heard a soft knock on the wall between the rooms. He was on his feet instantly, tapping back to let her know he had heard. Her voice came through the thin wall, small and frightened. "I had a nightmare about Thomas finding me. I just needed to know you were still there." "I am here," Harrison replied, loud enough for her to hear clearly. "And I will be here all night. Nothing is going to happen to you." "Can you talk? Just so I can hear your voice." Harrison settled back on the bed, his voice low and steady as he talked about his claim in the mountains, about the creek that ran clear and cold, about the deer that came down at dawn to drink, about the eagles that nested in the tall pines. He talked until he heard her breathing even out through the wall, until he was certain she had fallen back asleep. Only then did he allow himself to rest, though he remained alert even in sleep, a skill learned from years of living alone where danger could come from wild animals or desperate men. They left Knights Ferry 3 hours before dawn, when the streets were empty and dark. Nora wore her new boots and coat, a pack of supplies on her back that Harrison had carefully lightened to account for her smaller frame. He carried the bulk of their provisions, his rifle strapped across his back, his eyes constantly scanning the darkness for threats. They walked for 6 hours before Harrison finally allowed them to stop, leading Nora off the main trail to a small clearing beside a stream. She sank down on a fallen log, her face pale with exhaustion. "I am sorry," she gasped. "I am not used to walking so far." "You did well," Harrison said, and meant it. "Most people who had been through what she had would not have made it half as far. We will rest here for a while, eat something. The hardest part of the journey is still ahead, but we have time." He built a small fire and made coffee, heating up some of the salt pork and beans he had packed. Nora ate hungrily, some color returning to her cheeks. As they ate, Harrison noticed her watching him, studying him as though trying to figure out a puzzle. "What is it?" he asked finally. "You do not act like other men I have known," she said slowly. "You move carefully, like you are aware of how big you are. You do not raise your voice. You ask before you do things. It is strange. Strange in a good way or a bad way. Good, definitely good, just unfamiliar." She wrapped her hands around her tin cup of coffee. "My father was loud, always shouting, always angry about something, and Thomas was worse. He seemed kind when we were courting, but the day after we married, it was like a switch flipped. Suddenly, everything I did was wrong. The food was too hot or too cold, the house too messy or too clean, my voice too loud or I was too quiet. There was no way to win." "That is because he never intended for you to win," Harrison said quietly. "Men like that, they do not want partners. They want something to control, to dominate. It has nothing to do with you and everything to do with what is broken inside them." "How do you know that?" "My father was the opposite. He treated my mother like she was precious, like every day with her was a gift. They laughed together, made decisions together, supported each other. That is what a marriage is supposed to be. What you had with Thomas Zimmerman, that was not a marriage. That was a prison." Nora was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. "I thought it was my fault. I thought if I could just be better, do things right, he would stop." "No," Harrison said firmly. "Listen to me, Nora. What he did to you was not your fault. You could have been perfect in every way and he still would have found reasons to hurt you, because the hurting was the point. Do you understand?" She nodded slowly, tears tracking down her face again. "I think I am starting to." They finished their meal in companionable silence, then continued on. The terrain grew steeper as they climbed into the foothills, the air cooler and cleaner. Harrison matched his pace to Nora's, never pushing her too hard but keeping them moving steadily. When she stumbled on loose rocks, his hand was there to steady her, firm but never gripping, releasing the moment she regained her balance. That night they made camp in a small cave Harrison knew about, sheltered from the wind. He built a fire at the entrance and made a comfortable spot for Nora deeper in, where the stone walls would hold the heat. "You should sleep," he told her as darkness fell. "I will keep watch." "You need sleep too," she protested. "I will rest later." "Tonight you sleep, and I make sure nothing disturbs you." Nora wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. She curled up in her bedroll, and within minutes her breathing had deepened into sleep. Harrison sat at the cave entrance, his rifle across his knees, watching the fire and listening to the night sounds of the mountain. An owl called from somewhere in the darkness. Small animals rustled through the underbrush. The wind whispered through the pines. He found himself thinking about the woman sleeping behind him, about the courage it must have taken to leave the only life she knew, even if that life was terrible. She had walked for 3 days without food or water, driven by the desperate hope that somewhere there might be something better. And somehow, by chance or fate or divine intervention, she had collapsed at his feet. Harrison did not believe much in Providence anymore, not since fever had taken his family. But maybe, just maybe, there was still some kind of plan at work in the world. Maybe he was supposed to find Nora. Maybe she was supposed to find him. Maybe two broken people could help each other become whole again. The next 2 days passed in similar fashion. They walked from dawn until dusk, stopping only for brief rests and meals. Harrison showed Nora how to read the mountain, how to find water by watching where birds flew, how to tell which plants were safe and which would make her sick. She was a quick learner, her eyes sharp and her memory good. On the 3rd night, as they sat by their fire, she asked him about his claim. "It is nothing fancy," Harrison said. "A cabin I built myself, 1 room with a loft for sleeping. A small barn for my mule and supplies. The claim itself runs along a creek, good water year-round. The gold comes in fits and starts, some days nothing, some days enough to make it worthwhile. It is honest work and I answer to no one but myself." "It sounds wonderful," Nora said wistfully. "I have never had a place that felt like mine. My father's house was his domain. Thomas's house was his prison for me, a place where I could just exist without fear. That would be wonderful indeed." "You will have that at my claim," Harrison promised. "I will not make you feel like a prisoner. You can come and go as you please, do what you like. I will not hover over you or demand things of you. You will be free there." "What if Thomas finds us?" Harrison's expression hardened. "Then I will make certain he leaves and never comes back. He is a big man, strong. He works at a lumber mill. He has hurt people before." "I am bigger," Harrison said simply, "and I have been living in these mountains for 5 years. I know every trail, every hiding spot, every advantage. If he comes, he will regret it." The certainty in his voice made Nora believe him. She found herself relaxing in a way she had not been able to for 3 years, the constant tension in her shoulders finally easing. They reached Harrison's claim late on the 4th afternoon. Nora had been bracing herself for disappointment, for some rough shelter barely better than sleeping in the open. Instead, she found a sturdy log cabin with real glass windows, smoke curling from a stone chimney. A small barn stood nearby, and a vegetable garden, now mostly harvested for the season, stretched along the south side of the cabin. The creek Harrison had mentioned tumbled over rocks nearby, its sound musical and soothing. "This is beautiful," Nora breathed. Harrison looked pleased. "Built it over 3 summers. Took my time, did it right. Come on, I will show you inside." The interior of the cabin was simple but comfortable. A large fireplace dominated one wall with hooks for cooking and a broad hearth. A handmade table and chairs sat in the center of the room. Shelves held supplies and a few precious books. A ladder led up to the loft, where Harrison clearly slept. "I will set up a bed down here for you," Harrison said, already pulling out blankets and spare lumber. "Give you privacy. The loft is warm, but you would have to climb past me to get to it, and I do not want you to feel trapped." "Thank you," Nora said, watching as he quickly constructed a simple frame and filled it with pine boughs and blankets, creating a comfortable sleeping spot in the corner farthest from the ladder. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. Harrison worked his claim during the day, panning for gold in the creek and checking his sluice boxes. Nora, who had been exhausted from her ordeal, gradually regained her strength. She took over the cooking, which Harrison accepted gratefully, admitting he had never been good at anything beyond basic beans and salt pork. She was a good cook, able to make even simple ingredients taste delicious. She also began to work on the cabin, mending curtains, organizing supplies, adding small touches that made the space feel more like a home. Harrison watched these transformations with wonder, realizing how much he had been merely existing rather than living. One evening about 3 weeks after their arrival, Nora was washing dishes when she suddenly began to cry. Harrison, who had been reading by the fire, immediately set down his book. "What is wrong?" he asked, not moving from his chair but giving her his full attention. "Nothing is wrong," Nora said through her tears. "That is the problem. Nothing is wrong. I keep waiting for you to change, to become angry, to show me who you really are, but you just keep being kind. You keep being patient. You ask me what I want for meals instead of demanding. You thank me for the work I do. You have not raised your voice once, and I do not know what to do with that. I do not know how to exist in a world where I am not constantly afraid." Harrison's heart ached for her. He stood slowly, approaching her carefully. "May I?" he asked, holding out his arms. She nodded, and he pulled her into a gentle embrace, his large arms encircling her but not constricting, offering comfort and safety. She sobbed against his chest, letting out 3 years of fear and pain and loneliness, and he simply held her, one hand stroking her hair soothingly. "You are safe here," he murmured. "I promise you, Nora, you are safe. I will never hurt you. I will never make you afraid. You can take all the time you need to learn how to live without fear. I am not going anywhere." They stood like that for a long time until her tears subsided and she pulled back embarrassed. "I am sorry," she said. "I got your shirt all wet." "It will dry," Harrison said, smiling slightly. "Feel better?" "Actually, yes," Nora admitted. "I think I needed that." "Then I am glad I could help." As October turned into November, the first snows began to fall. Harrison taught Nora how to maintain the fire, how to feed the mule, how to read weather signs in the sky. She proved an apt student and, more than that, a good companion. She was funny when she felt safe, with a quick wit and a laugh that made Harrison smile. She was intelligent, asking thoughtful questions about the mountain, about gold mining, about his life before. In turn, she began to share her own story. Not all at once, but in pieces, fragments that she offered when she felt ready. She told him about her mother, who had died when Nora was 12, leaving her alone with an alcoholic father. About being married off to Thomas at 19, desperate to escape her father's house and naive enough to believe any alternative would be better. About the first time Thomas had hit her and how she had blamed herself. About the slow erosion of her spirit day by day until she had almost forgotten who she was beneath the fear. "But I am remembering now," she said one evening as they sat by the fire, snow falling softly outside. "I used to like to sing. Did you know that? I have not sung in 3 years." He said my voice was irritating, but I think I might like to try again. "I would like to hear you sing," Harrison said. She did, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. Her voice was sweet and clear, carrying an old ballad her mother had taught her. Harrison closed his eyes and listened, thinking he had never heard anything so beautiful. When she finished, he opened his eyes to find her watching him nervously. "Was that all right?" "It was perfect," he said honestly. "You have a gift, Nora." She blushed with pleasure, and Harrison felt something shift in his chest. He had been attracted to her from the beginning, drawn to her courage and her strength. But this was something deeper, something that went beyond physical attraction. He was falling in love with her, he realized. With her laugh, her kindness, her resilience. With the way she hummed while she cooked, the way she always said good morning like she meant it, the way she had begun to smile more easily as the weeks passed. He said nothing, though. She had been through too much, needed time to heal. The last thing she needed was him declaring feelings she might not be ready to hear, might not ever reciprocate. So he kept his growing love to himself, content simply to be near her, to watch her bloom like a flower finally given light and water. December brought heavy snows that made travel impossible. They were effectively cut off from the world, alone together in their mountain sanctuary. Harrison worried that Nora might feel trapped, but she seemed content, even happy. "This is the first winter I have ever looked forward to," she told him one afternoon as they watched snow fall past the window. "Usually winter meant being stuck inside with my father or Thomas, months of misery, but this is different. This is peaceful." "I am glad," Harrison said. And then, because he could not help himself, "Are you happy here, Nora? Truly happy?" She turned to look at him, her green eyes serious. "I am happier than I have ever been. You have given me a gift, Harrison. You have shown me that there are good men in the world, that I deserve kindness and respect. Even if this all ended tomorrow, I would be grateful for that." "It is not going to end tomorrow," Harrison said firmly. "You are welcome here as long as you want to stay. Forever, if that is what you want." "Forever is a long time," Nora said softly. "Yes, it is." They held each other's gaze for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then Nora looked away, color rising in her cheeks, and went back to her sewing. Christmas came, and Harrison surprised Nora with small gifts he had been secretly working on. A pair of mittens he had knitted from yarn he had traded for in Knights Ferry before they left. A small carving of a bird he had made from a piece of cedar. A book of poetry he had ordered months ago and forgotten about until he unpacked his winter supplies. Nora cried when she opened them, but happy tears this time. "I did not get you anything," she said. "You have given me more than you know," Harrison replied. "You have made this cabin a home. You have given me someone to talk to share meals with. You have reminded me what it is like to care about someone. Those are gifts beyond measure." She hugged him then, and Harrison held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of her body against his. When she pulled back, they were standing very close, and Harrison saw something in her eyes that made his heart race. "Harrison," she whispered, "I think I am falling in love with you." He cupped her face gently in his large, calloused hands. "Are you sure? You do not have to say that. You do not owe me anything." "I am sure," she said. "And I know I do not owe you. That is exactly why I can say it, because you have never made me feel like I owe you anything. You have given freely, expected nothing, and somehow that has freed me to feel things I thought I would never feel again. I love you, Harrison Masters. I love your kindness and your strength. I love the way you protect me without smothering me. I love how safe I feel with you. I love you." Harrison felt tears prick his eyes. "I love you too, Nora. I have been falling in love with you since the day I found you. You are the bravest, strongest, most beautiful woman I have ever known." He bent slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but she rose up to meet him, and their lips met in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. "I am still healing," Nora said quietly. "There are times when I get scared for no reason, when I flinch at sudden movements. I do not know if I will ever fully get over what happened to me." "Then we will heal together," Harrison said, "and I will be patient as you need me to be. There is no rush, Nora. We have all the time in the world." They spent the rest of that Christmas day together, holding hands, stealing kisses, talking about everything and nothing. That night, Nora climbed the ladder to the loft for the first time, and Harrison held her as she slept, his arms around her providing warmth and protection. The winter passed slowly, beautifully. Their physical relationship progressed carefully. with Harrison always letting Nora set the pace, always checking in to make sure she was comfortable. She appreciated his patience more than she could express, the way he could be passionate and gentle at the same time, the way he made her feel cherished and desired without ever making her feel used. Spring arrived in a rush of melting snow and new growth. As the trails cleared, Harrison made a trip to Knights Ferry for supplies, taking Nora with him. She was nervous about leaving their sanctuary, but Harrison stayed close, his presence reassuring. At the general store, Sheriff Porter greeted them with a knowing smile. "Harrison, and this must be your wife." Nora stiffened, but Harrison squeezed her hand gently. "Not yet," he said easily. "But soon, I hope." Porter nodded. "Well, I thought you should know. That man I mentioned last fall, Thomas Zimmerman, he came through in October, about a week after you left. Asked if anyone had seen his wife. I told him she had passed through, bought a ticket on the stage to San Francisco. He seemed to believe me. Heard later he went out there looking for her. Doubt he will be back this way." Nora sagged with relief, and Harrison put his arm around her shoulders. "Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate you letting us know. Us old-timers have to look out for each other," Porter said. "And for people who deserve a second chance, you two take care of yourselves." As they walked back toward the boarding house to pay their respects to Mrs. Chen, Nora squeezed Harrison's hand. "Did he really say wife? Did you tell him that?" "No," Harrison said. "He assumed, but I would like it to be true if you would like that too." He stopped in the middle of the street and turned to face her. "Nora Zimmerman, would you do me the honor of becoming Nora Masters? Would you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life making sure you always feel cherished and protected and loved?" Nora felt tears spring to her eyes, but these were the good kind, the kind that came from overwhelming happiness. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you. I cannot think of anything I want more." They were married 2 days later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Knights Ferry, with Sheriff Porter and Mrs. Chen as witnesses. Nora wore a new dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her pick out, pale blue like a summer sky. Harrison wore his best shirt and pants, his long hair neatly trimmed for the occasion. The Reverend was a kind older man who asked no questions about Nora's past, focusing only on the future they were building together. When Harrison kissed his bride, sealing their vows, he put everything he felt into that kiss. All his love, all his promises, all his determination to protect and cherish this woman for the rest of his days. When they broke apart, Nora was smiling through tears, and Harrison knew he had never seen anything more beautiful. They returned to the mountain as husband and wife, to the cabin that was now truly their home. Summer came in warm and golden, and they worked the claim together, Nora proving surprisingly adept at panning for gold. Their earnings were modest but steady, enough to be comfortable. One evening in July, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Nora took Harrison's hand and placed it on her stomach. "I think I am pregnant," she said softly. Harrison's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "Fairly sure. I have missed my monthly twice now, and I have been feeling sick in the mornings. Mrs. Chen told me those were signs, back when I talked to her in the spring." Harrison pulled her into his arms, his heart so full he thought it might burst. "A baby! We are going to have a baby! Are you happy?" Nora asked, suddenly uncertain. "I know we have not talked about children yet. I should have asked you first if you even wanted them." "Happy does not begin to cover it," Harrison said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I am thrilled, amazed, grateful. A baby, Nora, our baby." She relaxed against him, her own joy bubbling up. "I never thought I would want children after everything with Thomas. But this is different. This baby will be born out of love, will grow up in a home where both parents care for each other." That is everything I never had, and I am so grateful I get to give it to our child." They talked late into the night, making plans, discussing names, imagining their future. Harrison promised to build an addition onto the cabin before the baby came, a proper bedroom so they would have more space. Nora began knitting tiny clothes, her face soft with contentment as she worked. In September, Harrison took Nora back down to Knights Ferry to see the doctor there, a competent man who confirmed the pregnancy and pronounced Nora healthy. He advised that if the snows came early, they should consider staying in town for the winter so Nora would be near medical help when the baby came. But the weather held clear and mild, and they returned to their mountain, confident they had time. October brought cooler weather and the changing of leaves. Nora's belly swelled with their growing child, and Harrison found himself constantly in awe of the miracle of it. He talked to the baby every night, his large hands gentle on Nora's stomach, telling his unborn child stories about the mountain, about the stars, about how much he and his mother loved them already. In early November, 2 weeks before the first predicted snow, Nora went into labor. Harrison had been preparing for this, had all the supplies ready, but when it actually happened, he found himself nearly panicking. Nora, despite her pain, managed to laugh at him. "I need you to be calm," she told him firmly between contractions. "You are the steady one, remember. I need you steady now." Harrison took a deep breath and nodded, forcing himself to focus. He had delivered foals and calves before. The principle was the same, even if the stakes were infinitely higher. He boiled water, gathered clean cloths, said prayers to any god that might be listening. The labor was long and difficult. Nora labored through the night and into the next morning, Harrison by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, encouraging her when she was convinced she could not go on. Finally, as the sun climbed toward noon, their child entered the world with a lusty cry. "A boy," Harrison said, his voice choked with emotion. "We have a son, Nora." He cleaned the baby carefully and placed him in Nora's arms. She looked down at the tiny face, tears streaming down her cheeks, and Harrison saw the moment she fell completely in love. Their son had dark hair like both of them, and when he opened his eyes, they were blue like mountain lakes. "Hello, little one," Nora whispered. "Welcome to the world. Your papa and I have been waiting for you." They named him Henry James Masters, Henry for Harrison's father, James for Nora's mother whose maiden name had been James. Henry was a good baby as babies went, sleeping in decent stretches and nursing well. Harrison was a devoted father, taking his turn walking with Henry when he fussed, singing him nonsensical songs, showing him off to the deer and birds as though the animals would appreciate how perfect his son was. That winter was harder than the previous one, with a new baby to care for, but they managed. They took turns sleeping, worked as a team in a way that felt natural and right. On the hard nights, when Henry would not stop crying and they were both exhausted, they would catch each other's eyes and smile, finding humor and connection even in the difficult moments. Spring came again, bringing with it new growth and renewed hope. Henry grew bigger and stronger, his personality beginning to emerge. He was a happy baby, quick to smile, and he clearly adored his father, his whole face lighting up whenever Harrison came into view. In May, they made the journey to Knights Ferry to show off Henry to their friends. Mrs. Chen pronounced him perfect and gave them a beautiful embroidered blanket she had made. Sheriff Porter admired the baby with the gruff kindness of a man who had never had children of his own but appreciated them nonetheless. At the general store, a stranger approached them, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Nora Zimmerman?" Nora stiffened, instinctively moving closer to Harrison. I was Nora Zimmerman. I am Nora Masters now. The woman smiled. I thought it might be you. I am Alina Wright. I was Thomas Zimmerman's neighbor back in Sacramento. I wanted you to know he died this past winter, pneumonia. He was sick for about a week, then he was gone. Nora did not know how to feel. Relief, certainly. But also a strange sort of sadness for the man Thomas could have been if he had chosen differently. Thank you for telling me, she said finally. He was not a good man, Alina continued. Everyone in the neighborhood knew how he treated you. When you disappeared, a lot of us hoped you had found somewhere safe. I am glad to see you did. You and your family look very happy. We are, Nora said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. We really are. After Alina left, Harrison held Nora close. How do you feel? Free, Nora said. Truly free for the first time. I did not realize until this moment that some part of me was still afraid he would find us, even after all this time. But now he is gone and I am free. We are free. That summer was the happiest of Nora's life. She and Harrison worked together in perfect harmony, raising their son, working their claim, building their life. Some days were harder than others. Nora still had moments when old fears would surface, when something would trigger a memory and she would find herself shaking. But Harrison was always there, steady and patient, reminding her that she was safe, that she was loved, that she never had to be afraid again. On their second wedding anniversary, as they sat on their porch watching Henry toddle around the yard chasing butterflies, Nora leaned against Harrison's shoulder. I never knew life could be like this, she said. Growing up and then with Thomas, I thought love was supposed to hurt. I thought that was just how life was. But you showed me different. You showed me that love can be gentle and strong at the same time. That protection does not mean control. That cherishing someone means wanting them to be happy, even if that happiness does not always involve you. Harrison kissed the top of her head. You taught me things too. You taught me that my heart was not as dead as I thought it was, that I could love again after losing my family, that opening myself up to another person was worth the risk. You brought me back to life, Nora. We saved each other, Nora said. Yes, we did. Henry, hearing his parents' voices, came running over on chubby toddler legs. Harrison scooped him up, settling him on his lap, and Henry giggled with delight. Nora watched her husband and son together, her heart so full she thought it might overflow. 2 years later, Nora gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Harold and Natalie. Harrison built another addition to the cabin, creating more space for their growing family. Henry was a devoted older brother, always wanting to help with the babies, singing to them the same nonsensical songs Harrison had sung to him. The years passed in a blur of happiness. Their claim continued to provide enough for them to be comfortable. The children grew strong and healthy, learning the ways of the mountain from their parents. Henry, Harold, and Natalie grew up knowing they were loved unconditionally, that their home was a safe place, that their parents would always protect them while also giving them room to grow and explore. Harrison never stopped cherishing Nora, never stopped making sure she knew how much he loved her. Every morning he woke up grateful for the gift of her presence in his life. Every night he held her close, promising in words and actions that she would always be safe with him. Nora bloomed under this consistent love and care. The scared, broken woman who had collapsed in Knights Ferry was gone, replaced by a confident, strong woman who knew her own worth. She became known in town as someone who would help others in need, who understood what it meant to struggle, and who extended grace to those who needed it. She and Harrison became known as a couple who were deeply, obviously in love, who treated each other with respect and kindness even after many years of marriage. One evening when Nora was in her 40s and their children were grown, with families of their own, she and Harrison sat on their porch watching the sunset, just as they had done countless times before. "You ever regret it?" Nora asked. "Taking me in that day? Your life would have been simpler if you had just walked away." Harrison took her hand, his grip still strong despite the gray in his hair and the lines around his eyes. "Not for a single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Nora Masters. You and our children and this life we built together. I would not change a moment of it." Nora smiled, leaning into his embrace. "I am so grateful I collapsed outside that general store. Grateful that you were the one who found me. Grateful for every moment since then. You have given me a life I never dreamed was possible. You showed me what it means to be truly cherished and protected. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything too," Harrison said, kissing her gently. "You gave me a reason to come down from this mountain. You gave me a family. You gave me love. You gave me purpose. I was just existing before you. Now I am living." They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, the mountain around them peaceful and beautiful. In the distance, they could hear the creek burbling over rocks, the same sound that had been the backdrop to their entire life together. Nora thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the scared young woman who had run through the night with nothing but hope and desperation. She thought about the man who had caught her when she fell, who had seen her at her most vulnerable and chosen to help rather than take advantage. She thought about the love they had built together, solid and real and enduring. "I love you," she said, the words as meaningful now as they had been the first time she had spoken them all those years ago. "I love you too," Harrison replied. "Always have, always will." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, they remained on their porch, two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life of love and safety and joy. Nora had never felt cherished or protected before Harrison, but he had spent every day of their life together making sure she knew how precious she was. And in doing so, he had found his own healing, his own purpose, his own joy. They had saved each other, and in saving each other, they had created something beautiful. A family, a home, a love that would endure for the rest of their days and beyond, a legacy passed down to their children and their children's children, a legacy of love, respect, protection, and cherishing. And as Nora drifted off to sleep that night in Harrison's arms, just as she had done for decades, she thought once more about how grateful she was for the day her strength had failed, and she had collapsed in Knights Ferry. Because that collapse had led her to the man who would spend his life lifting her up, protecting her from every harm, and cherishing her beyond measure. Their story was one of healing and hope, of two people who found each other when they needed it most. And it was a story that ended not with uncertainty or sadness, but with the quiet contentment of a life well lived, and a love that had stood the test of time. In their mountain sanctuary, surrounded by family and love, Harrison and Nora Masters had found their happily ever after, and it was more perfect than either of them could have imagined. The end.